Hi, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Eau Claire. I'm Debbie Campbell. I'm the worship associate this morning. Welcome to our virtual service. Opening words are from the Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. As Rabbi Jonathan Sacks taught, you can see religion as a battle, a holy war in which you win a victory for your faith by force or fear. Or you can see it as a candle you light to drive away some of the darkness of the world. The difference is that the first sees other religions as the enemy. The second sees them as other candles, not threatening mine, but adding to the light we share. What Jews remembered from that victory over the Greeks 22 centuries ago was not a God of war, but the God of light. And it's only the God of light who can defeat the darkness in the human soul.
Good morning. This is a special announcement for the about the Council of Leaders and Harvest Auction events. The 2021 Spring Council of Leaders date is Thursday, April 1st from 6:30 to 8 p.m. via Zoom. We ask that all leaders, board members, and committee chairs attend this Zoom meeting. There'll be a link to be shared in the UU connections, and also you'll get an email prior to the meeting. If you are unable to attend, please send a representative from your committee. Among committee announcements, there'll be committee announcements. We'll discuss safety and reopening plans, pledge results for our UUC, and budget budget items, as well as information on technology fundraisers that were approved by the board and the finance committee. Our harvest auction continues to have events throughout the year. Check out openings on the uueauclair.com website under Contribute Harvest Auction. And there's a historic tour of Irvine Park and geocaching Saturday, April 24th at 1 p.m., as well as bird watching at Beaver Creek on Saturday, May 15th, and plenty of other activities. So there's a lot of good stuff happening.
Good morning. I'm David Hirsch. I'm currently the president of the board. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation. We are a religious community who commit ourselves to diversity. We hope to nourish human differences, those of gender, race, ability, sexual orientation, political views, culture, class, and religious belief. Welcome to all who treasure freedom of conscience and the search for truth. We promise to do our best to provide you a spiritual home. We extend a special welcome to our visitors today. We hope you follow our Facebook page. To participate in Zoom and receive announcements about special events and our religious exploration classes, please sign up for our weekly email. There should be a link in the comment section on our Facebook page where you can sign up. Also, families can follow our UUC Religious Exploration Facebook page. There are religious exploration classes for 4K through 9th grade and youth group every Wednesday online for middle school and high school. We're so glad you joined us today.
Hi, I'm Sue Beadle-Sisum. Please join me for lighting the chalice. We light this chalice in memory of the courage of those who have struggled for freedom, the persistence of those who've struggled for justice, and the love of those who've built beloved communities to carry on the light of hope. Today, I am also going to be reading The Story for All Ages. It's called, Grandmother's Lesson by Eliza Davy Permain. And I need to go to the top of the story. Grandmother's Lesson is a contemporary story based on the Jewish tradition of the Passover Seder. Currently, we're in the first full day of Passover. Last night was the first Seder. Excuse me. Once upon a time, there lived a brother and sister named Leah and Sam, who were about your age, the story says. So let's pretend, whoever you are, and you're a child, they're about your age, maybe 8 or so. They were Jewish, and Passover was their favorite holiday because there was so much to do. The day before the Seder, they would help sweep the house clean of all bread crumbs, help set the table with special Passover dishes, and put an extra chair and cup for Elijah the prophet. Then, on the evening of Passover, the relatives would arrive, and the Seder would begin just after sunset. One year, they came to a place near the end of the Seder where their father poured wine into Elijah the prophet's goblet and asked the children to go and open the door for him. This was one of their favorite parts because it was so mysterious. They ran to the door and looked up and down the street. They didn't see anyone except the new children next door. They had just moved from Haiti and they were playing in their yard. No Elijah. Leah came back to the table feeling sad. "Where is Elijah?" she asked. "Every year we pour him wine and open the door, but he never comes. What does he look like? Will he ever come for Passover?" Her parents looked at grandmother. "I've seen him," she said, "though I didn't realize it at first. Elijah comes in many disguises. I saw him long ago when I was about your age. One cold day just before Passover, I was minding my younger brothers and sisters, and my mother was resting. There was a knock at the door. I opened the door, and there stood a beggar. He was dressed in rags and had an old sack over his back. I saw that his shoes were full of holes. "May I come in and sit by your fire and have some food?" he asked. "I am so hungry and cold." I knew we were not a wealthy family. My parents worked hard and still had barely enough for a simple meal, let alone a Passover feast. "We have nothing extra for you," I said, and I shut the door. I peeked out the window and saw the beggar walk to our next door neighbor's house. The neighbors had even less than we did since the father had died. The mother worked very hard, taking in sewing, but she had many mouths to feed. I was sure that she would turn the beggar away. But I saw her open her door and invite him in. The next day, my mother was cooking our Passover meal, and I was setting the table. Suddenly, there came a cry from the kitchen. Our dog had grabbed the chicken from the counter, knocking over the apple raisin pudding my mother was preparing. When my father got home, he found us sitting and crying. There was no money to buy another chicken or to make another dessert to celebrate our Passover. We were still sitting and crying when we heard a knock on the door. It was our poor neighbor. She smiled at us and said, "It seems that misfortune has come to you. I would like to invite you to celebrate Passover at our home this evening. I don't have much, as you know, but somehow I was able to make more matzah balls than usual from my flour, and my soup kettle is full." My parents thanked her and promised to bring the foods they had prepared that had not been spoiled. After our neighbor had gone, my mother asked me, "Who was that knocked at our door while I was resting yesterday?" I said, "It was a beggar. I told him we didn't have enough and sent him away." "Where did he go?" she asked. "To the neighbors," I shrugged. My parents looked at each other. "You know who that beggar was?" my father asked. "No." "That was Prophet Elijah," said my mother. "He comes to see if we are helping to make the world a better place by being welcoming and generous." We had a wonderful Passover with our neighbors. We found that when we shared from our kitchen, there was plenty for all. When it came to the part in the Seder where my father poured wine into the Elijah cup, I asked if I could go and open the door for Elijah. My parents smiled. Grandmother finished the story by saying, "I didn't see Elijah again, but ever since then, I try to treat everyone as if they were Elijah, and I find that there is always enough." When grandmother's story was finished, everyone was quiet. Then Sam asked, "What do you mean that you treat everyone like Elijah, grandmother?" Grandmother looked at them and asked a question. "What was the last kind and welcoming thing that you did for someone?" "I helped my teacher to carry some books because she was tired," Sam answered. "I invited the new girl at school to play with me and my friends at recess," said Leah. "How did it feel?" asked grandmother. "Good, warm and happy," they replied. "That is how it feels to treat everyone like Elijah," grandmother said. Then Leah jumped up from the table. "I think Elijah would like us to invite our neighbors to celebrate Passover with us. Can we invite them to our Seder?" Mother and father looked at each other and smiled. The new neighbors weren't Jewish. They had recently moved to the neighborhood from Haiti. This was exactly the spirit of welcoming that Elijah taught. "Yes, go and tell them that if they would like to join our Seder meal, they will find our door open." It seemed that Elijah did visit that Passover day after all. I now want to share my reflection on Judaism, what Judaism has taught me. I've always been a seeker. I was baptized Roman Catholic, but my family was not all that religious. My mom's religion was music. When she was a child, she was allowed to go sing with the Methodists or the Baptists if she went to the Catholic Church as well. I was never willing to do that, so my early curiosity about various religions was not really cultivated until I went away to college. Music was the heart of her church, my mother, and singing was our church service. Any time or day of the week, she loved musicals and taught us about social justice and tradition through them. South Pacific taught us about racism. Fiddler on the Roof taught us about tradition and anti-Semitism. The King and I taught us about changing the status quo. And The Sound of Music taught us about love and fighting for what is right. I was drawn to Judaism because of the strong traditions, reverence for the earth, sense of community, the encouragement to ask questions, and the call to social justice. I was also drawn to Judaism for the music. There's so many lessons to be learned just from the music. For example, hope and perseverance is a major theme. Overcoming adversity, helping others, being a good person are central tenets. I could spend a lot of time just talking about music, but I thought I would share a bit about some people who've shaped my understanding of Judaism. During the process of preparing my reflection on the lessons I've learned from Judaism, I did quite a bit of research, as I do when I'm trying to work through something. I came upon Rabbi Sachs, whom Debbie quoted during the opening words for today's service. I don't remember learning about him when I was studying to convert to Judaism. He was a modern Orthodox Jew, and I converted to Reconstructionist Judaism, which, like Unitarian Universalism, is not as old as time. I learned about Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, the founder of the Reconstructionist Jewish movement, and after several years into his career as a rabbi, he dared to disagree with other Orthodox rabbis and assisted in founding modern Orthodox Judaism, which Rabbi Sachs was a part of. His radical ideas recognizing Judaism as a religious civilization, which should be malleable based on the current society we were living in, was not accepted by the Orthodoxy. And in 1945, he was excommunicated, my kind of guy. By then, however, he had already built the foundation for the present day Reconstructionist Judaism. Rabbi Kaplan wrote, "Jews are not a divinely chosen race. The Torah is a human document and not one supernaturally inspired. And modern Jews no longer look forward to the advent of a personal Messiah." Yes, I've been saying this since I was a kid, sort of. I remember being in elementary or middle school and having a theological discussion on the school bus with my friend Bruno. I'm a deep thinker, always have been. I remember saying that the issue I had with Catholicism was the idea that the Bible was written by God. Jesus was the only Son of God, despite the fact that we were taught we're all God's children, and the insistence that we take everything on faith, not looking at the historical context of why religious laws and traditions came about. I imagine I did not state my argument in those exact terms, but I remember being deeply conflicted and knew I did not belong because I thought differently than everyone else. But I digress. Reconstructionism, or reconstructing Judaism as it is now known, is not secular. Jewish spiritual insights and religious teachings provide important sources of meaning and purpose, and religion is seen as the heart of the Jewish search for meaning in life. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? UU principle number 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This is one of the most important lessons I've learned from studying Judaism. Even within Orthodoxy, Judaism teaches machloket leshem shemayim, the power of constructive conflict. Asking questions, debating scripture, engaging in dialogue is an integral part of Judaism, and one of the main reasons that it spoke to me when I needed it. So, in reverence for plants, which is covered in UU Principle number 7, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, there are many, I've gone out of order here, I'm so sorry. There are many holidays, harvest festivals, and fasting days. Like many other religions, Judaism was built around an agrarian society. I see these holidays and festivals like a farmer's almanac. There's a festival that happens right before Passover, for example, that reminds people to prepare the cattle for slaughter. If they didn't do that, there would be no brisket or shank bone for the Passover meal. There are 4, not just one, New Year's celebrations. And like I said before, out of order, one of them celebrates reverence for plants. It's called Tu B'Shvat, the New Year for trees. Think Arbor Day. It occurs in January because that's the optimal time for planting trees in the Middle East. Makes sense, right? Reverend Julie shared a lesson about Tu B'Shvat. She had been sent in an email. It is an excellent example of what Judaism has taught us. It's called Holy Leaf by Yitzhak Buxbaum. Once, Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, was walking with his father, Rabbi Shalom Ber, the 5th Rebbe. During the walk, they were discussing the subject of divine providence. As they went along, Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak, who was totally immersed in the conversation with his father, plucked a leaf from a tree, shredded it with his fingers, and scattered it in the wind. Seeing this, his father said to him, "How can you be so indifferent to a creature of God, the Holy One? Blessed be He, created this leaf for some purpose. It has a body and divine vitality. How is its eye less than your eye?" I fear my reflection will run too long, so I will finish with this. Yet another very important lesson I have learned from Judaism is tikkun olam, or repair of the world. How do you engage in tikkun olam? You engage in chesed. Chesed is the Jewish practice of loving kindness or caring for someone else. It is voluntary and individual. That means that we choose to give something over to someone else out of personal connection. Some examples of chesed are giving food to the hungry or visiting someone who is sick. In our congregation, we engage in a meal train or send get well cards. Chesed doesn't have to be giving to those you don't know, like some of the folks who sent cards and small gifts to my son when he broke his arm. It could be bringing potato leek soup to your friends just because. It could be sharing books with your community in a little library outside of your house. It could be smiling at someone coming out of the hospital after having a doctor's appointment and saying hi. So today, on the first full day of Passover, the commemoration of the exodus out of the bondage of slavery, go engage in tikkun olam, please, just because.
Thank you, Sue. Now is the time in our service where we share our deepest joys and concerns for our community and for those around us. You can share your joys and concerns in the chat, and I will share them aloud in this circle of community of care. And allow a moment of silence as you share your joys and concerns. Sue shares, please send love and peace to the DeBuff family. My childhood best friend Dan's father passed away from complications due to heart surgery. Dan was not able to be with his father during the week leading up to his death, as he lives in Connecticut and his father lives in Texas. May his memory be for a blessing. I would also like to share Amy Johnson, our RE coordinator, is recovering from outpatient knee surgery and is doing well. But if you'll send her good thoughts, and we light a candle for them. So I want to light a candle for a friend of Patty, Dave Mao, who has recently been diagnosed with renal cancer. We light a candle for him. I also want to light a candle for Danny and Tony Higley, whose cat Cy unexpectedly passed away. We light a candle for that special part of their family. Lacey gives thanks for her first COVID vaccine, and we will light a candle for that. Also, a joy from Marcia that her son Trent will perform with an ensemble for the first time since the pandemic. Yay for live music. Friday from UWC. You'll find a link on the website. Nate Otto gives thanks for his other UU congregation where he's been helping with technology. I think that's what he's talking about. Gave birth to an adorable baby boy, so congratulations. Teresa Ritzinger shares a joy of being able to see my 94-year-old parents yesterday after over a year apart. Maura have a joy from Johanna for visiting parents, and a joy from Maura for visiting parents as well. Thank you for this light in our lives. We have concern for from Johanna for Edwin Stenacher. Ed helped me for hours with my career. My joy is moving back to Eau Claire. So Johanna will be joining us again in Eau Claire. Susan O'Brien says, I was thinking and sending love to my Jewish family in the Philadelphia area for a happy Pesach. I am so happy that my nephew got into the PhD program he was hoping to get into. Congratulations. Going to light this final candle for all the joys and concerns too tender to escape the folds of our hearts. And it's a joy to be with you in these and all moments. Oh, we have to light it again. If you'll please join me in the words found in your order of service or on the screen in the chat. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
בשנה הבאה נשב על המרפסת ונספור ציפורים נודדות, ילדים בחופשה ישחקו תופסת בין הבית לבין השדות. Utirei, kamatoye, bashana, bashana, hava. Soon the day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Some have dreamed, some have died to make a bright tomorrow, and our vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, and a promise to make a new start. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, if we care. Do we care? You and me.
It Matters What We Believe by Sophia Lionfaz. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged. Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies. Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days and fears of unknown calamities. Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness. Some beliefs are divisive, separating saved from unsaved, friends from enemies. Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern. Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction. Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration. Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness. Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal growth. Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world. Other beliefs are palpable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
Sorry, I'm getting all verklempt here.
That's okay. I have a reading, Religion by Vincent Silliman. Let religion be to us life and joy. Let it be a voice of renewing challenge to the best we have and may be. Let it be a call to generous action. Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and the right. Let it be the sorrow that opens for us the way of sympathy, understanding, and service to suffering humanity. Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood. An eye that glories in nature by Imitrex, nasal spray, and online majesty and beauty, and a heart that rejoices in deeds of kindness and of courage. Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders. Let it be to us hope and purpose and discovering of opportunities to express our best through daily tasks. Religion uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere, holding before our eyes a prospect of the better life for humankind, which each may help to make actual.
As we can see, there is so much wisdom that that we never know. And you know, I did not grow up in the Jewish tradition, and nor did I convert to Judaism, but Judaism has also touched my life as a Unitarian Universalist. I have found that I especially admire the community and identity that has been sustained through the Jewish diaspora. I've also found that in the observances of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, it offers a way for Unitarian Universalists like myself to have a chance to reflect on the power of forgiveness and the ability to return to a more and better, a wholer relationship with myself, with others, and with what I call holy. In seminary, I tried to learn Hebrew. I can't do it half as well as Sue did, or those of you who took Hebrew as a language. I took lectionary, and it was definitely, I thought I was good at languages until I tried that. But what was beautiful about it was to look at how translating scripture and all of the many variations that you can find just in one word, and how that you can wrestle with the topic. We would spend time doing midrash, you know, figuring out what the textual interpretation should say. And this is something that rabbis and scholars have done for, you know, thousands of years. And the idea that we can question and wrestle and learn and grow is so important. One of the books that I read about Judaism that really touched me was by Rabbi David Cooper. And it was called Enter the Sacred Mountain. And he said that Judaism is not simply a collection of ritual, law, and custom, but it is a part of one's consciousness. From the moment of first waking, an observant Jew is obligated to offer up prayer of thankfulness for even being alive. He writes that in the last moments before sleep at night, the Jewish practice is to ask for the protection of angels during sleep. And he says, as a pluralist, he understands that it is not a particular tradition that has the right and true path. It is the point of access for the personal practitioner. He says it is the lure of what is within us. He also talks about the lunar calendar and the pulse of holy days that affords him a constant awareness of physical time and the thread of tradition and symbols that have been practiced over time in Judaism. The Sabbath invites rest for spiritual inquiry. The symbolic and mystical aspects of the Torah and the Talmud provide inspiration. And its Kabbalah provides an uninterrupted stream of mystical nectar. And as you can hear, David Cooper is more on the mystical side of Judaism. And so I thought it was wonderful that Sue mentioned Tikkun Olam, because that's where I went as well. And to participate in the repair of the world is, it must be more than a mental engagement or some social justice world. To many Jewish devotees, it is important to start repairing the universe by first repairing yourself. And I think that's really a powerful message in today's world. You know, so often we look outside of ourselves for validation, and we're told, you know, work faster, get richer, get younger, do better. And those toxic messages are hard to counter. And I think that idea of getting right with yourself and trying to seek forgiveness within yourself is powerful. One of the also very interesting things that I studied during seminary about Judaism was the engagement with other faiths. And in October 1990, a group of Jewish delegates traveled to the Tibetan home in exile, Dharmasala, India. And Roger Kamenetz, who is an avowed secular Jew, wrote in Jew of the Lotus regarding this dialogue. He said the Tibetan and Jewish faith have much in common. Both are diaspora faiths and have endured the destruction of temples and texts and cultures. One of the strong goals of this dialogue in 1990 was to have an idea of how do faiths survive in exile. And the other was to find the bridges between Judaism and Buddhism. And again, my UU heart went, yay! I love it. And the prevailing thought was that through dialogue, each side would deepen experience and wisdom. And the main organizers were two Buddhists from Jewish background. And another important aspect was that the Dalai Lama had a request for teaching about the Kabbalah and Jewish meditation. So he asked to learn also. And in return, he offered to respond to the question about Buddhist mystical teachings and practice. And according to Jew in the Lotus, Tibetan teaching is there is a fundamental orientation towards nature, call, and elimination of suffering. The path is towards a spiritual improvement through systematic meditations. The goal is to become a bodhisattva, a living Buddha, whose greatest compassion will help all sentient beings. Well, Rabbi Zalman Shalome offers a radical example of presenting a very different view, a path and goal of mystical Judaism, where Buddhism begins with nature of the mind and its suffering. The view of Kabbalists presents a cosmology, and this is based on the worlds that correspond to the letters of God's name, Yod, He, Vav, and He, and I might be mispronouncing those. But he correlated it to earth, air, water, and fire, which is very interesting. And also talked about the Hasidic tradition, where one prays and where meditation before the four worlds of body, heart, and mind and spirit. Through these prayers, one rises towards the goal of nearness of God. And in Buddhism, there are four elements, and sometimes a fifth of space that is added. And this is, of course, talking about Tibetan Buddhism. And he wrote that the question for Hasidism is how to develop the kavana, the prayer, and a strong spiritual intention to lift the everyday life to higher realms. And so you can hear the traditions and how much they have in common. And I think that's what we forget in everyday life, is how much we have in common with our neighbors, and yet at the same time lifting up the beautiful difference. Just like we don't say, I see no color. Well, we shouldn't say that. And we shouldn't say every religion is the same, because it's not. But there are things we certainly have in common. And what I find beautiful is the idea that practice and prayer and tradition doesn't have to be a weight. And growing up in the Bible Belt, some of that heaviness of that sort of ritual and things like that, for me, felt confining. Whereas when I hear about, Sue's experience, or I hear about the experience of the writer of Jew in the Lotus, I find that, there's a beauty and a freedom that you can find in those rhythms and in those traditions. So we look to our own UU congregation. We practice water communion, right? The gathering of the waters. We celebrate often Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, solstice, Christmas, and celebrations like flower communion and Will Taylor's beloved Darwin Sunday. I'm so grateful for these traditions that help me go through the year, and thinking about our own folks in our congregation who come from different backgrounds and who give us the gift of their beliefs and their learning, and that we're on this path together and that we can learn together. May we keep learning and growing. May we keep finding that we can act in chesed, as Sue told us, that we can be kind to our neighbor and love one another. Amen and Amin. All right. Now is the time in our service where we share our chesed, where we share with one another, and our you can designate your offering for 50-50, give away the plate. You can also designate it for what you like online at uueauclair.com. There'll be a link in the chat for that. And just so grateful for all the ways in which our community shares with one another. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. You can also text to give at 84321. Thank you.
Please join me now in extinguishing the chalice and reciting the words. I'm lost in my script here. Goodness. Sorry. Here we go. Words by Elizabeth Sully Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you for joining us today for our service. We hope you'll join us again. Our closing words are from Andrew Palkala. As you prepare to leave the sacred space, pack away a piece of this congregation in your heart. Wrap it carefully like a precious gem. Carry it with you through the joys and sorrows of your days. Let its gentle glow strengthen you, warm you, remind you of all that is good and true until you gather here again in this place of love. For those of you watching from our Facebook live stream, I'm so glad you've joined us today. If you'd like information on how to join services in Zoom, you can fill out the visitor link in the Facebook comments. Those attending on Zoom, we will take a brief moment to share joys and concerns or share names that you might not have shared during service. And then we'll move into our breakout rooms for coffee and conversation. Go in peace, go in love.